I'm Nick Burns, Executive Director of the Aspen Strategy Group, and this is a conversation on the imperative of national service. And I'm joined by two good friends, two people I admire a lot, Governor Deval Patrick, the former governor of Massachusetts, my home state, someone with a great background in civil rights and service in the Justice Department before he was in the gubernatorial seat in Massachusetts. And we're glad to have Governor Patrick here, who's been a longtime advocate for national service. And my friend and co-director of the Aspen Strategy Group, Anja Manuel, live from San Francisco, California, who also has a perspective on this. We're going to have a conversation about national service. The Aspen Strategy Group is a unique group. We believe in nonpartisanship, where Republicans and Democrats and independents who get together several times a year to talk about major issues that the United States faces almost solely in the international realm on foreign and defense policy. And when we met this past August virtually, we couldn't be together because of the pandemic, we had a long conversation about the need for national service, and we drew up a statement, which we're going to link to this broadcast, that many of us are signing, that puts forward the proposition that now's the time for a national service mission. It's time for Republicans and Democrats and independents to stand up together for national service. It's time for Congress and the next administration, or the future administration of the United States, to get behind this. It's time because we're a divided, polarized country. We're separated red-blue, north-south, urban-rural, coastal interior of the country. We need to get to know each other. We need to make sure that we have a common purpose as Americans, first and foremost, for the future of our country, the kind that certainly my dad received when he was a Marine in the Second World War. He came from an Irish immigrant community in Worcester, Massachusetts, but he ended up for 4 years in the military, serving with Americans of all colors, creeds, faiths, ethnicities. And it was a broadening experience for him and an important experience for him. We need to do that in the United States, and we couldn't have a better person to start this conversation than my friend, Governor Deval Patrick, who's thought about this. And Deval, I want to welcome you and ask you to say a few words about why you're behind this.
Well, Nick, I remember, first of all, thank you very much for including me, and thanks to the Aspen Strategy Group for taking this initiative and offering this leadership at such a critical time for all the reasons you said. I remember being a guest at a meeting of the Aspen Strategy Group, I want to say 2 years ago. I think that was right.
I think that's right.
It was what I remember, among many other marvelous parts of that visit, was a briefing by a senior aide to Senator McCain, who was leaving his last briefing in Washington and on his way to visit Senator McCain as he lay dying at home. And he stopped and he offered some real insights that at that point, as I recall it, Nick, were not public, about just how deep and insidious the interference by Russian operatives in the 2016 election was, and how they had sown all of this misinformation and dissent. I remember that being really chilling, but also reflecting on how easy it was to divide us. That just a little, pushing down, a little pressure on the cartoon version that we have of each other made it easier than it ought to have been to inflame and inflate these misimpressions that we have of each other. And it just struck me, it was easy because we don't know each other. And it's a long way around to the point you made about your dad. I'm interested in national service, one, because we have a slew of unmet needs. So there is real need, but also because it's a way to bring Americans from different backgrounds, different experiences, different corners of the country together to work on meaningful things alongside each other and to learn not just about the unmet needs, as critical as that is, but to learn about each other. Because I think it's a lot harder to lampoon people, and as I say, we need to know each other better as a part of finding our way back to common cause.
Anja, I know you're interested in this as well. The three of us are signing this along with Joe Nye and Madeleine Albright and Bill Burns and Sylvia Burwell and General Jim Cartwright and so many of our friends, Tom Donnellan, Steve Hadley, two former national security advisors, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, former senator from Texas, currently our ambassador to NATO, Walter Isaacson, the historian and thinker, Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, David Petraeus, our former commanding general in both Iraq and Afghanistan, Penny Pritzker, the former Secretary of Commerce, Susan Rice, another former national security advisor, Anne-Marie Slaughter, Fran Townsend, Fareed Zakaria, Wendy Sherman, the list goes on. Those are some of the people signing this, Republicans and Democrats. Why are you supporting it?
Right. Well, as you can see by that list, there are some positive things that Republicans and Democrats want to do together. And especially the last 4 years in our country have shown how easily we can be divided, as Deval said, and how easy it is to break things and how hard it is to build them back up. So what the statement is trying to do is really start small. And we haven't called for a mandatory service year. I know many of our members would like to get there. I'm originally from a very small blue-collar town in Germany where national service was mandatory. You either chose military service, or if you didn't want to do that, you chose civil service. And just as Deval said, the important function that did to bring people together and allow us not to caricature one another that's the impetus behind this. You know, this isn't something we normally talk about as the Aspen Strategy Group. We talk about what are we going to do about China? What are we going to do about Russia? But this summer, we felt very strongly that with the pandemic raging, with the crisis in race relations in the country, with the economic crisis, that before we can go forward and be strong in the world and frankly respected again in the world, we have to do a lot to get our house together. And an initiative like this that's on a human level is a great way to get it started. You start small and say maybe it's voluntary and it's a few months, and you get universities to say, we'll look more favorably on people applying if they've done a service year or a service 6 months. You get employers to say, we'll look more favorably upon it if you've done this. Eventually, maybe you move to a system where it's just an expectation that every young person after high school does this. And then eventually, maybe it's a mandate, but maybe it's not. But would love both of your perspectives on where you would take this initiative and what it could do.
Well, thank you, Anja. You've added a lot to the conversation. Deval, I guess I have two questions for you that Anja and I would have. One is, when a lot of people think of national service, they think of the military. Mm-hmm. But of course, we're thinking about a broad array of positions that young people could have that are in the civilian realm as well, and in domestic affairs, not just foreign affairs. So if you could talk about that, how you envision the mix of opportunities for young men and women. And secondly, obviously you've been in the political world as governor of Massachusetts. How difficult is this going to be to convince a president and a Congress to actually get this done and to enact it into the law?
So I think the end game is exactly what Anja described from the system in Germany. I'm familiar with the system in Israel. Those two are like a number of other countries where service is mandatory. It's either military or civilian, meaning one may choose the one or the other, and it's universal. I think in this country, starting with a voluntary program is smart. I think it is also important to build out incentives or ways in which folks will build this into an expectation, universities and businesses preferring folks who have had that kind of broadening and maturing experience. And as I said at the outset, there are so many unmet needs domestically. There are unmet foreign needs that go beyond the military, like, for example, the Peace Corps, that are enormously important to the reputation and contribution of the United States overseas. So I think lots and lots of opportunities. Now, and I should add, I think the program has to be constructed in a way that makes it possible for people who are from working class backgrounds to participate, which means folks have to be paid and they have to have benefits. It has to be a true alternative to being immediately in the conventional workforce.
Sure.
The answer to your second question, Nick, is it will be difficult to persuade a president. Of course, it depends on which president it is. But it will be difficult to persuade a president and a Congress because there's money involved and there are an awful lot of other priorities. But I think the way to think about national service is from the perspective of money. All the studies show that the return on that expenditure in terms of public good measured a host of different ways is exponential. And secondly, there are many other priorities that are served by expanding meaningful national service and making it an expectation of young people in this country. So I'm very, very hopeful, and I think the moment has come for the leadership of the ASG and many, many others to drive this forward.
Deval, I know it's so difficult, given we're 3 weeks out from a national election, to try to look into the crystal ball, what might be possible in 2021 or 2022. And there's so little that Democrats and Republicans, particularly in Congress, seem to want to work on together. I would hope that we'd have people on both sides of the aisle who would see the need that you've described, the vast need in our economy and society, as well as for how the United States projects itself and involves itself in the rest of the world. Am I being naive to think we could actually have a bipartisan consensus here?
I think we have it as expressed by the signatories of this letter, as expressed by the example ASD offers in the way it gathers experts and folks with deep experience from both sides of the aisle or no side of the aisle, folks who have an intellectual and experiential contribution to make. And by the way, that is what makes America stronger, what makes America great. We're the only, sort of multiracial, multi-ethnic, values-based nation in some respects in the world. And if you think back to our origins and our purpose, and I think that is a real source of strength. We need a healing in this country. And that healing isn't going to come just by a change in this or that administration or this or that member of Congress or by policy alone. It is about understanding that we have a stake in each other's dreams and struggles as well as our own. And I think a service program of this kind is an important contribution to that.
Anja, you've thought very deeply about this. We're going to give you the last word. Give us some hope and inspiration of how you see this going forward.
Well, I would just second what both of you have said. This is a positive thing that Republicans and Democrats can actually do together to rebuild our country. We've been doing so much to tear ourselves apart. And it seems like in Congress, the very few things we can cooperate on is being anti-China, tough on China. Let's find something really positive and optimistic, whether it's a Trump administration in January or whether it's a Biden administration. I think with the right push behind this, this is one optimistic, positive, building thing that the United States can actually get done.
So many thanks to Anja Manuel, the director of the Aspen Strategy Group. Many thanks to our friend, Governor Deval Patrick of Massachusetts. And thanks to the Aspen Institute for support. We do hope this proposition for national service can come to fruition in our country before too long. Thanks so much for watching us today.